apps. And then, of course, you have your hybrid apps, which, as I said before, is part native app, part web app. So those are also written in HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. You have your cross-platform ability. The difference with an hybrid app versus a web app or a native app is it's displayed in a web view, so basically a browser. And through plugins, you can still access all the native, well, I'm not going to say all, but most of the native features that you would be able to access from a native app. So still access the camera, and backtrack a little bit, web apps have come a long way, so they can access your camera, gyroscope, and some native features as well. So that, but with hybrid apps, you definitely have more ability than with a web app. And you can distribute them in app stores, so just like a native app. So that's a good thing for visibility, because most people aren't going online and searching for your website to go on your app. I think I read something like 86% of people spend 200 plus minutes in an app versus going to a website. I think it's like 10 minutes on a website or something like that. So, and so pros and cons of web apps, native apps, and hybrid apps. This is kind of a little quick chart. You might not be able to read some of the small writing, but basically what this shows is you get the full capability of your phone, your mobile device, from your native apps and hybrid apps. And on this side, multiple platforms, so it's easy to be used on multiple platforms. You got your hybrid app and your web app versus your native apps, kind of a single platform. So you got to develop and maintain a different code base for each platform. This kind of chart here gives you a better idea. Where is it? Okay, we're not going to be able to see it all. It's not good. Better. All right, so as I said before, when you're developing a native app, you gotta, if you're going to develop it for one or more platforms, then you got to know one or more languages, which typically most companies, if they're going to hire at least 2 different people to develop both of those apps, if you're going to do an Android and an Apple app. Versus your hybrid or your web app, you can use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, so you got one person that could develop the app for all your different platforms. Again, you have access to the app stores from your native and hybrid apps. And a big thing is development time, cost, and maintenance when you're developing a native app versus your hybrid app or your web app. Again, I mean, you got 3 different people, so that's 3 different salaries or whatever you have to pay, 3 different platforms you have to develop for, and I guess, and why it says moderate for your hybrid app, sometimes you may have to go in and tweak some of your code after you ported it over to a said platform. So you might actually have to change something in the Objective-C code or whatever, but it's typically something small. You typically don't have to do that, but that could add to your development time versus a web app. Another big thing is graphics. You're definitely not going to get the same high performance from your graphics with a hybrid app or a web app versus a native app. So if you have something that's really graphics intensive, then you definitely want to go native. And this is kind of a list of the features that each platform has access to. So basically, as of now, they almost have access to it. You see the more info on the web app side, and that's due to you have to use different plugins and libraries and things like that when you're trying to access certain features when you're using a web app. And you still have to do that for hybrid apps, but The plugins are a little bit more, I guess, robust, I would say, than the libraries that you would find for a web app. So just kind of so kind of your use cases, kind of hit this already, but native apps, more so even, and the thing is, people are really getting away from native apps because it's just so expensive to develop and maintain. But typically they're used for games and high performance requirements. So, and even if you need full device access, but like I said, that's kind of going away. But you, I don't know if you all have seen, but Twitter and Facebook have gone back and forth between native apps and hybrid apps over the last 2 or 3 years. Even I think LinkedIn also changed from a hybrid app to a native app, I think in 2013 or something like that. But it's more so for user usability. Why they switch and some of the access to some of the features on the phone, such as the new Facebook Live. It wasn't as smooth in the web app when they were developing it initially, so they switched to the native app. I don't know if you noticed that you can't access Facebook Live unless you use the app. You can't access it from on your computer, or if you go to the mobile app on your phone. So, and then web app. If you have an existing website that you want to make mobile friendly, then you can do that relatively quickly with the web app. So less effort, less cost, save some money. If you don't need to access features of the device, that's, like I said, that's almost irrelevant now since things have been developed further. But you do not have access to push notifications or the contacts on the phone in a web app. So if you want to say, hey, we have this sale going on, then you're not going to have much chance of doing that in a web app or accessing contacts. Examples of that. So, and also Facebook has all three really. So they have the web app that you can access via your phone, the m.facebook, and they have the native app. Well, and then they got rid of their hybrid app. YouTube also the same way. They have a web app and they have a hybrid app that you can download to your phone. Pandora, same thing as a web app. Moving on to the hybrid apps, just it does not require high performance or graphics intensive displays. If you need to access the device's features, and some examples of that: Instagram, Gmail, Uber, Temple Run, and Angry Birds. Temple Run and Angry Birds are written in Unity. I don't know if you've heard of that before, but they're written in Unity, which is similar to, not similar, but it's a cross-platform framework, similar to the framework that I use to develop the app for the soybean producers, but not the same kind of programming in C in Unity. So Ionic is the framework that I use to develop the app. So Ionic is built on AngularJS and Apache Cordova. And at the beginning of this year, Ionic started Ionic version 2, which went to AngularJS 2, which is a huge difference from Angular 1. So I can't take an Ionic 1 app and run it in Ionic 2.
So for those of us who are ignorant here, what is Ionic versus, it's not a language, right? So what is it?
It's more of a, so how I look at it is Ionic is like Legos. So
okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like Legos. So you can pretty much build anything you want from those Legos. You can't make it look exactly like you want it to look. That's kind of how I take it. So it kind of is an abstraction of some of the HTML or JavaScript that
It's
you
a
might
little bit
have.
about like MATLAB to Fortran.
Yeah, you can put it that way. But but it makes the development process a lot quicker, especially for your web views and things you might want to display. Definitely, you can type one line,
Okay.
it's there versus, yeah, having to, everything out. But, yeah. And then Cordova is also a part of Ionic. Formerly known as PhoneGap. A lot of people have heard of PhoneGap, but not Cordova. But it switched to Cordova a couple of years ago when Adobe bought PhoneGap. Well, they bought the company that owned PhoneGap, and then they donated it to Adobe, which is kind of weird. But so Cordova packages your web app into a hybrid or native app. So that's what allows the cross-platform use of your app, and allows you to access the native features of the device via plugins. So in Ionic, you're kind of developing the functionality and the user interface of your app, and then Cordova has the plugins that allow you to access the different features within your phone or mobile device. So that's kind of the idea. This is kind of all the platforms that Cordova allows you to port your web app over to. So you got Android, BlackBerry, iOS, Ubuntu, Windows 8, Windows 10, and even OS X. So you can. And this is kind of all the things that you can access on your phone using Cordova. And pretty much for the main platforms, you can pretty much access anything that you need that I can think of that you would want to use on a device. So that kind of almost defeats the purpose of using a native app, in my opinion, for most things. All right, so now I'll do a little demo. All right, so just gonna start. So when you're starting an Ionic app, you have to use the command line to start it. So there's no GUI interface, pretty start button for you to push, but it's pretty simple. So to start an app, you just type in Ionic. But once you've installed Ionic in Node, you can see it at the bottom.
Kind of like back to the DOS days.
Yeah, pretty much. I really can't raise it up. Full screen. So I don't know if everybody can see that at the bottom. But just Ionic start, and then the name of your app. So name it BAE.
So you missed your S too and started with it. Now you have Ionic Tart.
I don't know what that would have given me. And then, so after that, so you put the template. So there's a bunch of templates out there that you can use for starting these apps. So I'm going to use the tabs template. And basically the tabs are the app. It's similar to the app that we developed. You have the icons at the bottom, and that's how you navigate through that. See that install. So when it's installing those NPM packages, those are kind of the libraries that the app uses natively.
Did you buy a license for Ionic?
No, Ionic's free. It's open source, so you can even go in and tweak it and change it to whatever you want. Alright, so now that we have our app there, I can just type in Ionic serve. And there's the, oh, that's not it. That's supposed to be it. Let's try that again. Oh. So, no, what happened was I was already in a folder when I so I gotta go back. All right, now let's try that again. All right, so rebuilding that app again in its own folder. So it did launch the app, but it launched the app of the folder that I was in when I created this one. All right, Donnie, it's time for you to pull out your phone now. It's the boring part. All right, now I'll change directly into that. And now Ionic. There we go, there's our tabs app.
Ta-da!
Yeah, so, but this is a good starting point. If you were interested in developing an app, it's kind of, depending on what you wanted to do, of course, but there are other templates that you can use. There's one with side menu, so you can swipe it over for your menu instead of having your menu at the bottom, or click the button at the top to select your menu. And then beyond that, I'm going to open up the app that we developed for the producers. Oh, part I left out. So if we wanted to build this app for either iOS or Android, all we would have to do is say, we would have to add the platform. So Ionic, add platform, and then iOS or Android. And that would add the platform to our project. And then from there, if we wanted to build that, program for that platform, it's just Ionic build whatever platform you want to build.
So you make one and then you build it for iOS and then you build it for Android?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know how.
We're out of time.
Okay, well, yeah, I'll just go ahead and run the. So this is that running in the web view that we developed for the producers. So you hit this button, and what it does is get your current GPS location, and then it runs those calculations that Joe talked about. So you can kind of open up more info for each tab and kind of see. So this is the total time. It's right here too. Yeah.
It's pretty much the exact same.
Yeah. So that's, yeah, just the different parameters that a producer may want to look at for a said elevator. And then they can also, this edit button, and they can come in here and edit different things for which the elevator. So see, we added the totals that he talked about down there. And then this is kind of similar to the spreadsheet that he showed at the top, where they had to input that information about their farm, their trucks, how much grain, average speed, moisture percentage. And here, as he said, they had multiple farms, so they can add their farm here. And how this is set up, you type in your name, say BAE, and you just add the location. Alright, so that location is added. Now if we wanted, say we were at home, you go here, and now we can estimate using that location that we selected, which is going to give us the same thing right now because it's here. yeah, that's that. Any questions?
So what's left to do on it?
We've got well, we're still surveying a few more producers.
So you're in the beta test phase?
Yeah, we're showing it to them, they're giving us feedback on what they like and don't like, things with the tools. A lot of, we've gotten the most response out from Western Kentucky. We need a few more here in Central Kentucky because the elevator availability is vastly different. And I want to make sure we're not getting feedback just for, from a few people. So we're expanding that there. Most of them really liked it. I think we're getting pretty close. There's just a few little things, I don't know, just small things like how they want to calculate things. We're going to go in back in, but that's about it.
And I found, oh, sorry. Oh, and I found the phrase that this gives to match up with the video with the elevators.
Well, the elevator won't exactly tell them. Well, our net price includes the transportation cost.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's intuitively makes sense to them.
Yeah, it did intuitively make sense. We did get one guy who, he has his 5,000 acre farm is like a hobby for him. He actually sells crop insurance most of the time.
5,000 acres, a hobby farm?
Yeah, he had a couple employees out of his hobby. So, he had, since he's on the insurance background, he had everything calculated out. He's like, wait, no, that cost me $40 per load to take to Louisville. I think your number on transport is slightly off. And he's sitting there with, he got his phone out, got his calculator out, and goes, you're saying 7 cents per, hold on. And then like came back and said, no, you need to be at least this much. And we went back and looked at what it was. Jordan actually showed that, go to my info. We had different depreciation costs, and we had this operating cost as a low, 20 cents per mile. The way he was calculating, he was closer to 40 cents per mile, which was the high cost. And so he kind of had it in there, but he really knew his numbers. He knew how much it cost to go different places, and he didn't want to use our calculations because he said, and I can try and make yours work, my model, but I know what it is, I know what my depreciation costs are, so I would rather just type a number in. So we're getting some of that.
He wants more control.
Yeah, so the cost, so yes, the costs do match kind of what they're seeing. There is one thing, the elevators, you'll notice they had 13 to 13.5, a single moisture discount level. 13.5 to 14 was another. So it's a stepwise function, it's not a continuous function. And when we created the app, we created it thinking of a continuous function where they discount it as a stepwise function. That changes things a little bit.
So you have to fix that.
Yeah, we need to fix that. Oh, we already fixed it, okay. So, yep, it's all about it. It's fixed. But, yeah, it's interesting. You'll haul something in at 13.9, and then 14 will be different. So if there's any way at all you can manage to knock it down to 13.9, they'll do it to get that, because it's a big difference there.
Oh, yeah, do you guys like offer something that shows the producers what equations you're actually using in case they use different ones themselves or something like that? You were talking about people use different ones. Is there something where they know, okay, you guys are using this equation to calculate your costs or whatever?
Yeah, well, we have the spreadsheet, in which case they can just open it and look if they're really interested. I was surprised by how much they wanted to get into it, and I'm guessing that's just because the big producers, that's how they make their money, they do these things right. So they do know the math behind what they're doing.
I don't know if were you referring to the discount method? 'Cause they can change that there also to.
I don't know, I was
Okay.
just,
Yeah,
in general, like whatever equations you guys are using, like you were talking about the stepwise instead of the other one a second ago. So I just didn't know,
Well, Joe, you have a paper, but I don't know what's in the paper.
We don't go through all the equations in that
Just the
one.
idea.
It was the idea, because that was on Is It Work extension article. So, yeah,
What do you figure out for the wait times with everything in place? How they just assume that some places just take longer?
we have it in the elevator list. You can go in and assign a wait time. And that was another thing, we're talking to the producers, do you know the wait times, is that realistic? And they kind of came back and said, yeah, don't populate it, let us do it. We're gonna know the wait times better than anything else, and if we're running it that day, because it'll change over the day, you know, so there's no way we can keep a real-time update on them. And they had a feeling for which ones are gonna be faster and slower, so they kind of knew that,
So at some
so.
point you have cameras at all the elevators.
Yeah.
The information in.
It's gonna be a huge project, cameras.
Google Traffic.
So it
yeah.
bases it off what everyone else is doing.
We can have this massive farmer reporting service. It's like $1 million.
Don't laugh, 10 years ago, this would have been like, no way could we do this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, I'm thinking like, let's see, can we take the traffic cameras, process that with big data,
Exactly.
offline?
It's a new grant.
Yeah, back end is
Yeah.
another thing that you also want to think about when you're looking at developing maps, because somebody's going to have to maintain it, or you're going to have to pay someone to host it,
Yeah.
or something like that. So always keep that in mind when you're thinking about developing.
Apple charges $100 per year to maintain your developer account, and you have to pay that to keep the app in the App Store. You stop paying, they drop you.
Google's $25 for life. It's still $25.
Yeah.
Huh. Windows for yet to find out.